This is my true story. I lost my daughter 22 years ago in the Canadian Rockies. They found her backpack at the bottom of a cliff near Jasper. Her jacket was torn on the rocks below. The search and rescue team spent 11 days looking for her body. They never found it. The mountains kept her. I held a memorial service without a casket, without closure, without anything to bury. For over 2 decades, I visited the spot where she disappeared every year on the anniversary. Last month, at 3:17 inches, the morning, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. Rachel, my daughter, who vanished into the wilderness 22 years ago. I answered. A woman's voice whispered, "Dad, I'm so confused. I don't know where I've been. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from and subscribe so this story reaches everyone who needs to hear it." My daughter, Rachel Ann McPherson, was born on March 3rd, 1983, in Edmonton, Alberta. She was my only child. Her mother passed away from cancer when Rachel was just 7 years old. I raised her alone. We were everything to each other. She grew up strong, independent, the kind of girl who wasn't afraid of anything. She loved the outdoors, hiking, camping, climbing. The mountains called to her in a way I never fully understood, but I supported it because it made her happy. In August 2003, Rachel was 20 years old. She was studying environmental science at the University of Alberta. That summer, she planned a solo hiking trip through Jasper National Park. I didn't want her to go alone. I told her it was dangerous. I begged her to take a friend, to join a group, anything. She laughed and told me I worried too much. She said she'd done this trail before. She said she'd be fine. She left on August 14th. She was supposed to return on August 21st. When the 21st came and went with no word from her, I called the RCMP. They told me to wait another day. Sometimes hikers got delayed. Sometimes they extended their trips. But I knew my daughter. She always checked in. She always called. On August 23rd, they found her campsite. Her tent was still set up near Maligny Lake. Her sleeping bag was inside, neatly rolled. Her food was stored properly in a bear canister. Everything looked normal, except she wasn't there. They found footprints leading toward a trail that went up into the higher elevations. The trail ended at a cliff overlooking a deep ravine. Her backpack was found 40 meters down, caught on a rock outcropping. Her jacket was there too, ripped and stained. They assumed she had fallen. The terrain below was treacherous, loose scree, dense brush, areas that were nearly impossible to search. They brought in helicopters. They brought in dogs. They searched for 11 days. They never found her body. The official report said she likely fell and her remains were carried away by wildlife or washed further into the ravine by seasonal flooding. They declared her deceased. I was given a death certificate for a daughter whose body I never saw, whose grave I could never visit, whose fate I would never truly know. The memorial service was held on September 15th, 2003, at a small church in Edmonton. Maybe 50 people came. Her university friends, her professors, a few of my colleagues from the accounting firm where I worked. Everyone said beautiful things about her. Everyone cried. I stood at the front and couldn't speak. I had prepared words, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. I just stood there for 2 minutes in complete silence before my brother gently led me back to my seat. After the service, people told me the usual things. She's in a better place. She's at peace. Time heals all wounds. None of it helped. None of it made sense. How could she be at peace when I didn't even know what happened to her? How could time heal something that had no closure? I sold our house in Edmonton 6 months later. I couldn't stay there. Every room reminded me of her. Her bedroom door that I couldn't bring myself to open. The kitchen table where we ate breakfast together every morning. The backyard where she used to practice her climbing knots on the old oak tree. I moved to a small town called Canmore, right at the edge of the Rockies. Some people thought I was crazy, moving closer to the mountains that took my daughter. But I needed to be near them. I needed to feel close to her, even if all I had was the wilderness that swallowed her. For 22 years, I lived in that small town. I retired from accounting at 60. I kept to myself mostly. I had a few friends, neighbors who checked on me, but I never remarried. I never had other children. Rachel was it for me. She was my whole world, and when she disappeared, my world ended. I kept her phone number saved in my contacts. The number had been disconnected within months of her disappearance, but I couldn't delete it. Every year on her birthday, I would call it just to hear the recording. The number you have dialed is not in service. That recording became a strange comfort. It was the only thing I had left of her that felt real. Every August, on the anniversary of her disappearance, I drove to Jasper. I hiked to the spot where they found her backpack. I sat on a rock overlooking the ravine and talked to her. I told her about my year. I told her I missed her. I told her I was sorry I let her go alone. I apologized 1,000 times over the years. 1,000 apologies to the wind, to the mountains, to the empty sky. I accepted that she was gone. I had no choice. 22 years is a long time, long enough for hope to die, long enough to stop looking at the door every time someone knocked, wondering if it might be her, long enough to stop dreaming about her coming home. Until last month, on November 8th, at exactly 3:17 inches the morning, my phone rang. I was asleep in my bedroom. The sound pulled me out of a dreamless sleep. I reached for the phone on my nightstand with my eyes still half closed. When I saw the name on the screen, I stopped breathing. Rachel. Her contact photo stared back at me. A picture from her 20th birthday, 3 months before she vanished. She was smiling, holding a cake I had made for her, candles flickering in her eyes. My hands started shaking. The room felt ice cold. I thought I was still dreaming. I thought I was losing my mind. That number had been dead for over 2 decades. I had called it myself so many times and always got the same recording, but now it was calling me. The phone kept ringing. I couldn't move. My thumb hovered over the green button, but my body wouldn't respond. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. On the 5th ring, I pressed answer. I lifted the phone to my ear. Silence. Complete silence for what felt like forever. Then I heard breathing. Slow, shaky breathing. Someone was there. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat had closed completely. Then a voice. A woman's voice. Quiet, confused, trembling. Dad? One word. That one word destroyed me. It was her voice. I know my daughter's voice. I heard it every day for 20 years. I heard it in my memories, in my dreams, in the wind coming down from the mountains. This was her. Not a recording, not a memory. Her. I finally forced air into my lungs. Rachel? My voice came out as a broken whisper. Silence on the other end. Then, Dad, I'm so confused. I don't know where I've been. I don't know what's happening. Nothing makes sense. Tears poured down my face. I couldn't control them. Rachel, where are you? Tell me where you are. I don't know, she said. Her voice cracked. I woke up and everything was different. I'm in a house I don't recognize. There are people here who call me by a different name, but I'm not that person. I'm Rachel. I remember you. I remember the mountains. I remember falling. My blood went cold. You remember falling? I remember the rocks giving way under my feet. I remember reaching for something to grab. I remember the sky spinning, and then nothing. Just darkness. And then I woke up here, and everything was wrong. I stood up from my bed. My legs were shaking so badly I had to grab the wall for support. Rachel, listen to me. I need you to find an address. Look for mail. Look for anything that tells you where you are. I will come to you right now. I will drive all night. Okay, she said. Her voice was so small, so scared. Okay, I'll try to find something. Dad, don't hang up. Please don't hang up. I won't, I said. I'm right here. I heard movement through the phone. Footsteps on hardwood, a door opening, rustling sounds. There's mail on a table, she said. It says, Victoria, British Columbia. There's a street address, 2847 Fernwood Road. I grabbed a pen and scribbled it on the notepad by my bed. Victoria. That was over 1,000 kilometers from Canmore. Across the Rockies, across the interior, all the way to the coast. I'm coming, I said. It's going to take me maybe 12 hours to drive. Can you wait for me? Can you stay safe until I get there? I think so, she said. Dad, why is this happening? Why don't I remember anything? I remember being 20. I remember the hiking trip, but everything else is just gone. Before I could answer, the line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear. The call timer showed 7 minutes and 22 seconds. I tried calling back immediately. The recording played. The number you have dialed is not in service. I tried again. Same recording. I tried 15 more times. Nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on my bed with my phone clutched in my hands, replaying every word she said. Her voice, her confusion, her fear. It was real. The call was real. I checked my call log over and over. Rachel, 3:17 a.m., 7 minutes 22 seconds. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. As soon as the sun came up, I started packing. I threw clothes into a bag. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, my phone charger. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even think about work or responsibilities or anything else. My daughter had called me from beyond the grave, and she needed me to find her. I got in my truck and started driving west. The drive from Canmore to Victoria takes about 12 hours, if you don't stop. I did it in 11. I pushed through the Rogers Pass, through Kamloops, through the winding roads of the interior. I stopped only once for gas and coffee. My mind raced the entire time. What would I find at that address? Would Rachel be there? Was this all some elaborate hoax? Some cruel prank? But who would do that? Who would have her old phone number? Who would know to call me at 3 inches the morning and pretend to be my daughter? I arrived in Victoria at 6:42 p.m. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky orange and pink. I punched the address into my GPS. 2847 Fernwood Road. It led me to a residential neighborhood in the north end of the city. Older houses, mature trees, quiet streets. I parked in front of number 2847 and stared at it. A modest 2-story home with blue siding and white trim, well maintained, a small garden out front, lights on inside. This was the address my daughter gave me, my daughter who had been dead for 22 years. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, trying to gather the courage to get out. What was I supposed to do? Knock on the door and say I was looking for my daughter who died in 2003? They would think I was insane. Finally, I stepped out of the truck and walked to the front door. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Every step took tremendous effort. I reached the door and hesitated with my hand raised. Then I knocked. Footsteps inside, the sound of locks turning. The door opened. A woman stood there. She was in her early 40s, with graying brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore reading glasses and an oversized cardigan. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and caution. "Can I help you?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. This woman wasn't Rachel. She was too old. Her features were different. Had I come to the wrong place? "I'm sorry," I managed to say. "I'm looking for someone. I received a phone call last night from this address." The woman's expression changed. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Fear? "Who are you?" she asked quietly. "My name is James McPherson. I'm from Alberta. My daughter, she called me from this address. Or at least, I think she did. Her name is Rachel." The woman's face went pale. She grabbed the doorframe like she needed support. "You need to leave," she said. Her voice trembled. "I don't know who you are or what you're talking about. There's no Rachel here." She started to close the door. I put my hand out to stop it. "Please," I said. "Please. I'm not crazy. I received a call from my daughter's phone number at 3 a.m. That number has been disconnected for 22 years. She gave me this address. She said she woke up here and didn't know where she was. Please, if you know anything, I'm begging you." The woman stared at me. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked over her shoulder into the house, then back at me. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. "What name?" "Rachel." "How do you know that name? She uses a different name. She's been different for years. But sometimes, at night, she says that name in her sleep, Rachel, over and over, like she's trying to remember something. My heart stopped. She's here? She's in this house? The woman closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears were streaming down her face. I think you'd better come inside. Her name was Margaret Chen. She led me into a small living room and gestured for me to sit on a worn sofa. She sat across from me in an armchair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. 22 years ago, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. My husband and I were driving through the mountains. We were on our way to visit family in Alberta. It was late August. There had been heavy rain the day before, and the roads were treacherous. I listened, my entire body tense. We were driving through Jasper when we saw her, a young woman walking along the side of the highway in the middle of nowhere. She was covered in dirt and blood. Her clothes were torn. She looked like she had been through hell. My breath caught in my throat. We stopped and picked her up. She was barely conscious. She couldn't tell us her name. She couldn't tell us where she came from. She just kept saying she needed help. We drove her to the nearest hospital in Hinton. Margaret paused, wiping her eyes. She was in bad shape, multiple injuries, head trauma. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived. When she woke up, she had no memory of who she was. Complete retrograde amnesia. She didn't know her name, her family, her history, nothing. Why didn't you call the police? I asked. My voice came out harsher than I intended. There was a search party looking for her. It was all over the news. Margaret looked down at her hands. We did call the police, but something went wrong. There was a miscommunication. They told us no one matching her description had been reported missing in that area. They said she might be a runaway, a drifter. They were overwhelmed with other cases. They didn't follow up. She met my eyes. We didn't know. I swear to God, we didn't know anyone was looking for her. She had no ID, nothing on her that could identify her. When she was released from the hospital and still had nowhere to go, no memory to guide her, we took her in. We gave her a home. I felt anger rising in my chest, but also something else. Grief, confusion, the impossibility of what I was hearing. You raised her, I said flatly. You raised my daughter for 22 years. We gave her a life, Margaret said defensively. We gave her safety and love. We named her Emily because she had to have a name. She built an identity from nothing. She went to school, got a job, made friends. She's been happy. Or at least, she was happy until 3 weeks ago. What happened 3 weeks ago? Margaret took a shaky breath. She started having nightmares, vivid ones. She'd wake up screaming about falling, about rocks, about a voice calling her name, but not Emily, Rachel. A name she'd never heard before, a name that meant nothing to her waking mind. But in her dreams, it was the only name that mattered. She stood up and walked to a window, looking out at the darkening street. She started remembering fragments. A house in Edmonton, a father who worked with numbers, a mother who died when she was young, mountains that she loved, details that couldn't have come from her life as Emily, because we found her when she was already 20. Margaret turned to face me. 3 nights ago, she had a breakdown. She was sobbing, saying she needed to find her father. She didn't know how, but she found a phone somewhere. An old phone we kept in a drawer. She called a number she somehow remembered, even though she doesn't remember remembering it. My number, I said. Margaret nodded. The next morning, she didn't remember making the call. She didn't remember the conversation. It's like 2 people are living inside her. The Emily we raised, and the Rachel she used to be. And Rachel is fighting to come back. I stood up. My legs were shaking. I need to see her. I need to see my daughter. Margaret hesitated. She's upstairs. She's sleeping. The past few weeks have exhausted her. But I have to warn you, she might not recognize you. She might not believe you. 22 years of living as Emily can't be erased in a single conversation. I don't care, I said. I need to see her. Margaret led me up a narrow staircase to the 2nd floor. We stopped in front of a closed door. She knocked gently. Emily, are you awake? There's someone here to see you. A pause. Then a voice, groggy from sleep. Who is it? That voice. Even muffled by the door, I knew it. My legs nearly buckled. "Someone who needs to speak with you," Margaret said. "It's important." The door opened slowly, and there she was. My daughter. She was 42 years old now. Her face had aged, her hair had strands of gray, but it was her. The same eyes, the same shape of her nose, the same way she tilted her head when she was confused. I saw the 7-year-old girl I had comforted after her mother died. I saw the 20-year-old who had laughed at my worries before leaving for the mountains. I saw every version of her that I had carried in my heart for over 2 decades. She looked at me with no recognition, just polite confusion. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she asked. The words broke something inside me. I opened my mouth to speak, but all that came out was a sob. Margaret stepped forward. "Emily, this man says he's your father, your biological father. He came all the way from Alberta because you called him 3 nights ago." Emily's face went pale. "I didn't call anyone. I don't have a father. I don't have any family." "You do," I said. I forced the words out through tears. "Your name is Rachel Ann Macpherson. You were born on March 3rd, 1983, in Edmonton. Your mother's name was Catherine. She died when you were 7. You loved the mountains. You loved hiking. You were studying environmental science. In August 2003, you went on a hiking trip in Jasper, and you fell. Everyone thought you died, but you didn't. You're here. You've been here this whole time." Emily staggered backward. Her hand went to her head like she was in pain. "Stop," she whispered. "Stop, please. I don't know what you're talking about." "You called me," I said. 3 nights ago, at 3:17 the morning, you said, 'Dad, I'm so confused.' You said you remembered falling. You said you remembered the rocks giving way. You gave me this address. You asked me to come. So I came." Emily was shaking now. Tears streamed down her face. "I don't remember that," she said. "I don't remember calling anyone. But the dreams." She looked at Margaret, then back at me. "In my dreams, there's a man. An older man, with kind eyes. He's always sad. He's always waiting for me. And I feel like I've hurt him, like I abandoned him, even though I don't know who he is." "That's me," I said. My voice was barely audible. "I've been waiting for you for 22 years. Emily let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She backed away until she hit the wall and slid down to the floor. "This can't be real," she said. "This can't be happening. I'm Emily Chen. I have a life. I have a job. I have people who love me. I can't be someone else. I can't be Rachel." I walked toward her slowly and knelt down in front of her. Every instinct in my body wanted to grab her and hold her, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You don't have to be anyone you don't want to be," I said gently. "But if there's even a chance that part of you is Rachel, don't you want to know for sure? Don't you want to finally understand where you came from?" She looked up at me. Her eyes, Rachel's eyes, searched my face. "How?" she whispered. "How could we possibly know for sure?" "DNA," I said. "A simple test. It'll tell us definitively whether you're my daughter. If I'm wrong, I'll leave and never bother you again. But if I'm right, we can figure out the rest together." Emily was silent for a long time. The only sound was her ragged breathing and the distant hum of traffic outside. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Let's find out the truth." The next morning, I drove to a medical clinic in Victoria and arranged for a DNA paternity test. Emily came with me. She was quiet the whole drive, staring out the window at the ocean. I didn't push her to talk. I knew she needed time to process everything. At the clinic, a technician took cheek swabs from both of us. She said the results would be ready in 48 hours. 48 hours of waiting to find out if the last 22 years had been a lie. Emily and I went to a coffee shop near the harbor. We sat across from each other at a small table by the window. The ocean stretched out behind her, gray and endless. "Tell me about Rachel," she said finally. "Tell me who she was." So I told her. I told her about Catherine, her mother, and how she died too young. I told her about raising a daughter alone, and how it was the hardest and most rewarding thing I ever did. I told her about her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. I told her about her love for the outdoors, how she would beg me to take her camping every summer. I told her about her intelligence, her stubbornness, her fierce independence. I told her about the day she left for her hiking trip, how I had hugged her and told her to be careful, how she had laughed and said she always was, how I had watched her drive away, never knowing it would be the last time I saw her. I told her about the search, the backpack, the jacket, the 11 days of hoping against hope before they declared her dead. I told her about 22 years of grief, 22 years of visiting the place where she disappeared, 22 years of talking to the mountains because I had no grave to visit. Emily listened to everything. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I believe you," she finally said. "I don't remember any of it, but I believe you. When you talk about Rachel, I feel something, like an echo of a person I used to be, like she's still inside me somewhere, waiting to be found." 2 days later, the clinic called. The results were ready. Emily and I drove there together. Neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, with 22 years of unanswered questions. The technician led us into a small office. She had a folder in her hands. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Mr. McPherson," she said, "I have the results of your paternity test." She opened the folder and looked at the paper inside. "The DNA samples are a match. There is a 98% probability that you are the biological father of the individual tested." Emily made a sound beside me, a small, broken gasp. "Rachel," I whispered. "You're my Rachel." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears, filled with something that looked almost like recognition. "Dad," she said. It was the first time she had called me that while looking at me. The first time she had said it with something other than confusion. I couldn't hold back anymore. I pulled her into my arms and held her. I held my daughter for the first time in 22 years. She was shaking. I was shaking. We stood there in that clinic office, crying into each other's shoulders, two strangers who were also family. The weeks that followed were the strangest and most beautiful of my life. Emily, Rachel, my daughter, began the slow process of rediscovering who she had been. She went through the belongings I had kept in storage all these years. Her old journals, her photographs, her books. Each item triggered small fragments of memory, a flash here, a feeling there. Nothing complete, but enough to know that Rachel was still inside her, slowly waking up. She met with doctors and specialists who explained that severe head trauma could cause permanent memory loss, but that emotional connections and familiar stimuli could sometimes help recover fragments of identity. They said her case was unusual but not unprecedented. Margaret Chen, the woman who had raised her as Emily, handled everything with remarkable grace. She told me she had always wondered about Emily's past, always felt there was something more to her story. Finding out the truth was painful, but she said it also felt like closure. She had saved a lost girl's life. She had given her 22 years of love and safety. That mattered, even if the circumstances were heartbreaking. I moved to Victoria. I rented a small apartment near Emily's house. We saw each other every day. Sometimes she called me James. Sometimes she called me Dad. Both felt right in different ways. She never fully became Rachel again. The Emily she had built over 22 years was too much a part of her to simply vanish. But Rachel was there too, emerging more and more as time passed. She started to remember the hiking trips. She remembered her mother's face. She remembered my voice reading her bedtime stories when she was small. One day, about 3 months after I arrived in Victoria, she came to my apartment with a strange expression on her face. "I remember the phone call," she said. "What phone call?" "The one I made to you. That night. I remember picking up the old phone from Margaret's drawer. I remember dialing your number from some deep part of my mind that I didn't even know existed. I remember hearing your voice and saying Dad for the first time in 22 years. You remember?" She nodded. "It's fuzzy, like a dream. But I remember feeling like I was drowning in confusion, and your voice was the only thing that made sense. Your voice was home." I didn't know what to say. I just took her hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry you had to grieve for someone who wasn't dead. I'm sorry I can't give you back the 22 years we lost. You don't have to apologize for anything, I said. None of this was your fault. The mountain, the fall, the amnesia, the miscommunication with the police. Every piece of bad luck that kept us apart, none of it was something you chose. But I'm here now, she said, and I don't want to lose any more time. Neither do I. Last week, Rachel and I drove to Jasper together. It was the first time she had been back to the mountains since her accident. We hiked to the spot where they found her backpack, the cliff overlooking the ravine where everyone assumed she had died. She stood at the edge, looking down at the rocks below. I stood beside her, holding my breath. I remember this place, she said quietly. Not from my memories of the hike, from the moment I fell. I remember the ground disappearing beneath my feet. I remember grabbing at the air. I remember thinking about you, wondering if you would ever know what happened to me. She turned to face me. I survived somehow. I must have hit something on the way down that broke my fall. I must have crawled out of that ravine before I collapsed on the highway. The doctors think my brain blocked the trauma to protect me. That's why I couldn't remember. That's why I became Emily instead of Rachel. But you're Rachel now, I said. At least partly. She smiled. It was Rachel's smile. The same smile I remembered from 22 years ago. I'm both, she said. I'm the daughter you raised and the woman Margaret raised. I'm the girl who loved the mountains and the woman who learned to love the ocean. I'm everything I've ever been, all at once. We stood there together, looking out at the vast wilderness that had almost taken her from me forever. The mountains stretched out before us, beautiful and indifferent, the same mountains that had haunted my dreams for over 2 decades. I lost my daughter 22 years ago in these mountains. I mourned her. I visited the place where she disappeared every year, talking to the wind and the rocks and the empty sky. I accepted that she was gone forever, and then she called me from beyond the grave. She said she was confused and lost and scared. She asked me to come find her, so I did. She's not the same Rachel I lost. Too much time has passed, too much life has been lived, but she's here. She's alive. She's my daughter. And after 22 years of waiting, that's more than I ever dared to hope for.